Hey everyone, it's Emily Fox. Today's video is going to be my top 10-ish favorite fantasy standalone. I feel like there aren't enough of them. Often whenever there is one, there's going to be a second book added to the collection, which is like kind of rooting the purpose. And not everyone wants to read long series, as is the case with fantasy ones. I did do actually my favorite list of completed fantasy series, so I will be linking that. And you're gonna see I did cheat once in here, but like in the other version, I kind of cheated too because I was mentioning some that are technically series, but I would reread them only as standalone. So like it's just balance. Let's consider this like one whole video instead of two. So we're just gonna get right into it. The first two books I want to mention are from what is quickly becoming one of my all-time favorite authors, and it is Blood Over Bright Haven. I did let someone borrow this copy. It better come back in one piece. But this book is technically not out anymore. It was self-published last year and it's coming out again at the end of October. If you have not pre-ordered this book, you need to. I do not say that very often, but once a year I choose my all-time favorite book of that year out of the 100-something books that I've read that year, and this was my favorite one of last year. It is fantastic. So like I said, adult fantasy standalone. The main point of view you're following is this woman who has spent her whole life studying, trying to make it into this magical organization. And it's a patriarchal society, so no woman has ever been accepted in like 200 years. And she ends up passing the test, so she will get to study magic, do some experiments. And in that world, magic and technology are intrinsically linked. And you follow in that story, her trying to figure out her research, but there is a second point of view that you start the book with. The first chapter, kind of a prologue, you follow the main character who is on the run with the remnant of his tribe. They're trying to make a run to safety, and a lot is happening. Don't want to spoil anything, because that first chapter absolutely grips you into the story. Like, if you're not reading some right now, this is going to be what will save you, because instantly I was emotionally invested. And I do think it's a good mix of action and character-driven parts of the story. I obviously enjoyed it a lot since it was my best book of last year, and I need to stop raving about it, but I won't. And if you can't wait, I would highly recommend also this other book by her. This is The Sword of Kaijen. This was an ebook on my Kindle for 3 years before I finally picked it up. And I don't know why I waited so long, because it's so good. It was also self-published. In my defense, I think that's part of the reason I didn't read a ton at the time. I'm getting better. But once again, adult fantasy standalone, you're following a few different point of views. One of them is the main female character, and she's kind of the reason why it took me probably the first half to really get into the story. I was a little frustrated with her because you get some flashbacks of her when she was younger. She went to this international school, she learned magic, fighting, and then she married into this very conservative family. They're very isolated in this empire. So she really started to conform to what was expected of her. You're also following her oldest son, his point of view as he's trying to learn again magic, fighting, and he's trying to follow again what is expected of him from his father, the community. And he also has the pressure of being intrigued with what's going on with the empire, because there's this big war happening, and so far they've been safe because isolation. So you're kind of seeing this brew in the first half, and then everything goes cuckoo for the second half. And I was, again, extremely emotionally invested. I think this is one of my favorite characters' arc that I've seen, like seeing them grow as characters throughout the story. And yeah, a lot happens. It was a tough read, and I really enjoyed it. So would recommend both of her books. I do think Blood Over Bright Haven is better, but both of them are 5-star. I recommend them all the time. So good. Would it be a favorite fantasy book without at least mentioning Brandon Sanderson? Probably not. I mean, his books are popular for a reason. He currently has 2 adult fantasy standalone, although he's planning on making them into series. But currently they can be read as standalone, so I feel like it counts. First off, Warbreaker. Personally, this is the book I always recommend starting with. I feel like people always say, oh, start with Mistborn. Don't do it. It's a trilogy. I mean, you can. But this is, in my opinion, a much better way to start because it's one book, less commitment. It's, last time I checked, still available as a PDF for free on his website. I know not everyone has access to books as easily, so check it out. His books are a little complicated to explain in general, but I really overall enjoy how he mixes complex world building with a magic system. This one is based on color, and there are also a lot of like political intrigue and like religions. It's all mixed together. So in this one, you get classic tropes of fantasy. You have a talking sword, you have like gods walking among us, and you have these 2 female characters, they're sisters, they're princesses, and they've always known that one of them was going to go and marry this god prince in the other town. Kingdom, Emily, kingdom. And last minute, the father switch and sends the other one. So of course, the one that is left behind goes and try to save her. And you're following the story. It's just a lot of political intrigue. It's just fantastic. And you get to experience what people call the Sanderson avalanche. He always has crazy endings. Yeah, unputdownable. Absolutely love this. And I would highly recommend it. Again, first one you should, in my opinion, pick up by him. It gives you a really good idea of what his style is, and you can decide if that's for you or not. I also wanted to give a shout out to Elantris. Even though it is one of his earliest works, so I feel like his weaknesses are a little bit more obvious, I still think it is absolutely worth mentioning and reading. It's a little shorter too, and once again, incredibly difficult to explain. So much happens in there, but in this world, there is this city, Elantris, where people that have been like blessed, I don't remember the exact word people are using. Basically, anyone can one day wake up transformed. They're basically gray. And they would go to this city and they would be all powerful, never hungry, blah, 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 like perfect beings. And something happened. They don't know exactly what happened, and it became almost a curse. So people that would wake up like that, all gray, would be sent there, but to be isolated because they're sick. Every like injuries you've had would never heal. You would never be not hungry. Like it is a curse. So your following character, who is a prince in the city next to it, who the day he's supposed to get married to the new princess that is coming, he wakes up transformed and he is sent hidden away into Elantris. So whenever the princess arrives, he's gone, but they're technically already married, so obviously that involves a lot of political intrigue, and the religion is mixed into the magic system, and so much happens, and it was great. And once again, the author is planning on making this into a series, but it is a satisfying ending. You get, again, all of his great crazy plots and endings, and it's absolutely worth checking out too. So would recommend Elantris. I almost forgot to include this book in this video, and frankly, that is quite on brand for the book. Piranesi. I wanted to include a little bit of everything because fantasy can be kind of broad, and this one is definitely different. I would say it's like on the verge of being magical realism, but I usually don't love magical realism, so I feel like this is as close to it as I will enjoy. You do have to give yourself a little while when you're reading this, because at first it's confusing, but it's because the main character is confused. They have no memory of what's been happening, and they are starting to piece things together, finding notes, trying to figure out where they are, this giant place, and they're just trying to survive day to day. They have contact with one person, but it's just so vague. I would say that there's a little bit of like Dark Academia vibes a little bit. We're going into fall, so I feel like this is perfect for it. And yeah, it's super different. I do think that overall this is something that people love or hate, but I did enjoy it so much more than I expected, and it is absolutely worth picking up. Especially if you are someone that enjoys maybe a bit more like literary fiction than like the average fantasy. This is definitely worth checking out. So Piranesi. One that took me by surprise that I finally got around to reading this year is The Goblin Emperor. This had been on my shelf for years and years and years, and I'm so glad that I picked it up. This one is a bit more like slice of life, which you don't see as often, I feel like, in fantasy. You're following a character who is the son of the second wife of the emperor. So the first wife that he actually loved died. So he gets remarried and he has this one son. This woman dies and, moves on. So he hides away the son because he wants nothing to do with him. He has barely had any contact with him. And then one day something happens. The emperor dies and his brothers. So he becomes the emperor. So he's brought to court and he has to figure out who are his allies, who are his enemies, what to do. And it's very, very character driven, very, again, slice of life day to day of him trying to piece things together. And it was great. A lot of political intrigue once again, but I feel like the character is really likable. So I just really enjoyed myself. There are a few sections with like Old English, which I'm not super familiar with because it's not my first language, but fairly easy to push through. And yeah, loved it. A bit more underrated, I feel like, in that list. Next, I wanted to mention A Master of Jinn, because this is, again, an adult fantasy standalone, but it's like a murder mystery in the fantasy world, and it's something that I started liking a lot more. And again, usually it's more series, and this one is just one book, so you get to try it. There are a few novellas that go with it, but you can read this on its own. You follow a female character who does that for a living. She works with jinns and trying to solve murder mysteries. And she gets sucked into trying to figure out what happened, and you get these like secret cults, really cults. The magic of, again, jinns, and it's just a really interesting one. Once again, I feel like because the main female character is likable. You get sucked into the story. There's a little bit of sapphic romance. I feel like in general, this book is good because of the world building more than anything. But if you're trying to get into more murder mystery and fantasy, if that's something that you think you would enjoy, I would once again recommend this one. It's just one book. I feel like I've read a couple, but they were always trilogy. So this one is worth checking out. This is where I'm cheating a little bit, but like, whatever, right? A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon. Okay, this is technically a prequel. A priori of The Orange Tree is technically the first book, which was meant to be a standalone, and then she came out with a prequel. So it's 2 books. I would recommend both of them, but you can read both of them as just one book. And between the two, I do think this one is better. So that's why technically it's the one that's included, but I would recommend both. So once again, complex high fantasy, you have dragons. Technically, it's essentially a giant battle between good and evil. So every X amount of years, there seems to be this new battle. One of the side is starting to win, so people have to fight to control usually the evil side. And it's a queendom. I feel like in general, it's not like all of the other fantasy. They always seem to be like under patriarchy just because, and it's not the case in here. That was refreshing. What I liked also is you get more of the witches in this one compared to book 1. You get some sapphic romances. And I feel like some of the weaknesses in book 1 are not in here. I feel like some of these, like some characters would die and like it would happen so quickly that it didn't really faze me. And like the big battle at the end was a little too quick for my taste. So I feel like, again, this one is the best one of the 2. You can read them in any order. But this one, I just enjoyed all the characters, all the point of views a lot more equally. And once again, a ton of political intrigue, world building. You get some of the magic in here. And it's just a refreshing, unique take on some of the classic tropes. So I would recommend A Day of Fallen Night. And if you enjoyed it and want more, I would definitely pick up A Priori of the Orange Tree too. They're definitely chunkers. It's actually really funny that I cannot find my copy of The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue because the main female character in there, everyone forgets about her once she leaves the room, which, like, I know I own this book. I just don't know where it is, and I know I didn't let anyone borrow it. So I am extremely confused, but again, it is funny because I feel like the first time I had heard about this book, people were saying that this was a love story between this woman and the devil, and it's not really like that. It's once again a bit more character-driven, lyrical than my usual personal taste, but if you don't really care for like super action-driven fantasy, I feel like this would be more your cup of tea. So like I was saying, this woman, everyone forgets about her constantly. So she's living forever. She made a deal with the devil to avoid a marriage that she wasn't interested in, and she has been living for years and years and years when she meets men who actually seems to be remembering her. So you get that story, and I feel like people were very divided. It became so popular so quickly. I feel like when that happens, people start hating it, but I feel like it's because more people are reading it than the people that might be the target audience. Overall, personally, I really enjoyed it. I do think this is one of the best work of the author. I enjoyed her writing. I enjoyed the story, and the ending was good. Again, it will divide people, but I would highly recommend The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, which I guess my copy is invisible right now. I feel like it wouldn't be a best list without including one weird one, because why not? And it has to go to Vita Nostra. To be completely fair, this is technically a series, but I believe the books are companion novels and only the first 2 are translated to English. So like, again, I'm cheating a little bit maybe. But in this one, you follow a female character who is on a trip with her mom when she starts getting harassed really by this strange man who is forcing her to follow some tests to be accepted into this magical school. And against her will, she has to go through all of it and gets to the school, and everything is freaking weird. It's one of those books that you're reading and wondering, what am I reading? But at the same time, you can't put it down and you need to figure it out. So if you like magical school, dark academia, and just weird books, you need to check this out. You get to the end and you're like, I'm not even sure what am I reading, but at the same time, it's really interesting, I guess. And it can be read as a standalone. That's what I've done so far. So you get an ending. That's all I'm gonna say. You get an ending. So one day I will be picking up book 2 and tell you if it's worth continuing, but you can totally read this and be done. So strange one, but worth checking out. So if I had to choose 10 standalone fantasy books to make you read, this would be my list. 10-ish, standalone-ish list. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comment section if you've read any of these, how you feel about them. Are you personally going to be adding some of these to TBR? And once again, I will be linking everything in the description box, including the version where I talk about completed series. so you can binge read them if you want to. Thumbs up, subscribe. Actually, you know what? I'll put it also on the screen so you can just easily click on it. And I'll put my fall TBR if you want to check out some of the books that I'm planning on reading in the upcoming weeks. And I will see you in my next video. Bye.